to the Cajun dance and the Zydeco. Filet gumbo and a crawfish pie. Filet gumbo and a crawfish pie.
Welcome to Literary Gumbo, a continuing look at the world of writers, writing, publishing, and all other peripheral events. My name is Fred Klein. I'm the chief stirrer after having spent about 30 years of publishing in New York City. My guest today has spent maybe a few less years, but he is one of the well-known, renowned poets here in Santa Barbara. I want to welcome you, Paul Willis.
Thank you, Fred.
Paul and I connected early on at the Santa Barbara Foundation, at one point helping choose young people for additional financing.
That's right.
But meanwhile, he's a professor. You're a full professor.
Right.
He's a professor at Westmont. He was absolutely one of the poet laureates, one of the first. But he does a lot of hiking, and I think hiking has somehow influenced his approach to the whole world of poetry. But I want you to go back and tell me where you're from, how a lot of people don't know your background, and I wish you would sort of bring me up to date. Where were you born? You weren't born in Santa Barbara.
You know, I was born in near Anaheim, California.
Oh, yeah?
Actually, my mother grew up on an orange grove there.
Uh-huh.
And I think just last week had a poem in a book called Orange County, a Literary Field Guide.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But I grew up in Corvallis, Oregon. And I think that's where the hiking came in, just tucked under the Coast Range and looking at the Cascades.
Uh-huh.
Went to college, Wheaton in Illinois.
Illinois, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Grad school in English at Washington State University. Taught part-time at Whitworth College in Spokane. And then,
what were you teaching? Were you teaching poetry? Right at the outset?
Or part-time, I was teaching composition.
Okay.
Yeah. I got my degree in Shakespeare, wrote a dissertation on Shakespeare and how he uses forests in his plays.
Uh-huh.
And my first full-time job was at a liberal arts college in Western New York, Houghton College, and now I've been at Westmont for 29 years. So I teach.
Wow.
I teach older British lit, and I teach a lot of the creative
British
writing classes.
literature?
Yeah.
Including contemporary?
Well, mostly Renaissance British
okay.
lit.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, where does Britain stand today? There really isn't. It doesn't have the force that it had in prior years, does it? In a literary sense, I mean, certainly in a movie, in the movie sense, a lot of movie stars still come from England and still seem to be, lose their accent or whatever, but they make their mark here in America. But I can't, outside of Zazie Smith, I don't know of anybody who. Well, that's not true. A couple of others I've heard of contemporary English writers. And she now lives, I guess, in America. She's not even considered British. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I think in this day and age, it's more literature written in English, whether that's in America or in Britain or in so-called Anglophone literature and former colonies that are now English speaking, and it kind of all melds together.
But the trilogy, somebody wrote, a woman, Hillary Mankel, Hillary.
Don't know that. No.
She won all those awards in Britain too. Who wrote? If it wasn't a trilogy, it was certainly two books. Wolf Hall was one of the two. Mm-hmm. Terrific contemporary writer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would go over to England like every Christmas, meet friends from all over the world, and I just got steeped in contemporary. I must admit, contemporary English, England, and English, because the country is so wonderful. I mean, it's so live.
Yeah.
I'm amazed. Anyhow, we're getting off the subject. We're really talking. I want to talk about you. So after Wheaton, you came here, or what?
Well, then I went to grad school at
Grad school.
Washington
And you've
State
been
University.
29 years at
Westmont, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And what is the enrollment now at Westmont?
You know, we're 1,200 students.
That's a good size.
Yeah,
That's a good size.
that's our limit actually
Yeah.
by
Oh,
the
yeah?
county. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But it's a wonderful school. A wonderful school.
You know, it's a lot of great students, a lot of great faculty. It's kept me there a long time. Yeah.
Well, it's wonderful to have your whole world in a sense there. But so what on vacations you and your wife hike all over the world? Is that it?
Well,
Huh?
we like to. Yeah, I hike and then I write haiku. Yeah.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Oh, I'm going to take a drink. I'll go. Let's take a drink of the haiku. Oh, okay, a good pun.
No, my wife and I met in an outdoor program where we were leading backpacking and climbing trips for Westmont and other groups.
She's from here?
She's from Northern California. She's from Grass Valley. So Sharon is a nurse practitioner now, and she works in the health center at Westmont, and she works in neighborhood clinics for low-income folks in town as well.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's still so this. But I mean, hiking at some point. Do you have certain, like the Everest? I'm assuming is not one of your aims. Is there some place that you want to go to and hike that you've not been to before? It seems to me that you've gone around the world in some ways.
Well, no, I mean I'm pretty much a West Coast
fellow.
I was privileged a couple years ago to, on sabbatical, be an artist in residence in North Cascades National Park in Washington State.
Oh, that would be like...
You know, they gave me a cabin for a month, and my whole job was to hike around and write poems, and your tax dollars at work.
Oh, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so that's my next manuscript is making the rounds.
Oh, now, well, let's not jump to that because we got to go. I want to.
Sure.
What was okay? So that did you? But you were obviously writing poetry all the time while you were teaching in the early days and whatever.
Yeah,
I mean, it was poetry that got to you.
You know, I started out writing fiction. I think any young person that wants to make a literary mark thinks about the novel in our culture. And while I was writing my dissertation on Shakespeare, I did write a sort of eco-fantasy novel, the reviewers called it. My brother calls it Narnia Comes to the American Wilderness, but it's set in a kind of mythic version of the
Narnia.
of the Cascades. But in my first full-time teaching job, 33 years ago, I didn't know, am I going to be a scholar? Am I going to be a writer? And that department I joined at Houghton College in Western New York, there are a couple fellas who were creative writers. That's what they did.
Where is it?
It's about 70 miles south of Buffalo.
Because I come from Syracuse.
Yeah,
so
not,
so
a few hours southwest of Syracuse.
Okay.
Yeah. So these two fellas, Jack Lex, Jim Zoller, were writing poems. And we'd have breakfast once a week, look at each other's work, and I just thought maybe I should try that. And I, it answered to something in me.
In you.
Yeah. And I found that I kept writing a number of fantasy novels and publishing.
Oh, still writing?
No, well, I did then, but
and getting published? Were they?
Yeah, I've published 4 of them, and they're collected now in a volume called The Alpine Tales, which is
the
still
one.
available.
The one.
That's right.
I
yeah.
have, yeah. Oh.
Yeah. And but I found that as I was learning to write poetry, the novels I was drafting kept getting shorter. And I think poetry is an art of condensation. And at least novel writing is an art of extension, creating this illusion of living with characters across time.
The first time I've heard that, and it sounds absolutely reasonable.
So I think there are very few people that
could
do both.
Yeah, I
you
think
know,
you're absolutely
you can
right.
think of Thomas Hardy,
Yeah.
maybe D.H. Lawrence, John Updike, maybe a little bit. But you know, I know novelists who they write beautiful novels. They read lots of poetry, but they can't write poems to save their lives. And I know a lot of poets who really can't get a longer narrative off the ground, and I'm not sure I could anymore either. So
Well, but
it's like a different set of genes.
yeah. Well, but it's also a different. You know, it seems to me that you're thinking more contained when you're writing poetry.
Yeah, you're trying to say a lot in a little.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but now who publishes them now, and what else are those? Going back to your poetry collections.
Okay.
You've written what, about 4 or 5 now?
I've written 4 full collections
full
so far,
collections.
and a few what are called chapbooks.
Yeah, the new one we'll talk about. But so what were the prior 3?
Well, the first one, Visiting Home, was published by Pecan Grove Press in San Antonio.
Yeah.
And the second one, Rosing from the Dead, published by Word Farm.
What was the word?
Rosing from the Dead. It's
instead of rising,
yeah,
rosing?
something our young daughter said that stuck in my head.
Wow,
Yeah.
I like it. Yes.
Yeah.
Go on, I'm sorry.
Published
that was 2.
Rosing from the Dead, published by
2.
Word Farm in Seattle,
Yeah.
a small literary press. Third one, Say This Prayer into the Past, published by Cascade Books in Eugene, Oregon, another smaller press. And this latest one, Getting to Gardisky Lake.
That's right. This one here, yes.
Yeah, published by Stephen F. Austin State University Press in Nacogdoches, Texas. So local poet Chris Buckley recommended I send my work there, and sure enough, they liked it. So.
Do you know my friend Gary Young?
Yes,
poet?
I do.
Gary,
Yes. And Gary's published with them as well.
But he also prints other people's stuff now too.
He does.
He's got his whole.
Yeah.
He's got his. I'm going to see him on the 25th of this month.
No,
He and
I
his
had
family.
Gary out to Westmont a year and a
Really?
half ago. We just really enjoyed
He
him.
did stop in and say hello to me
He's
one
just
time,
a
not in the
very
last year or
fine
so.
poet.
Absolutely,
Just,
absolutely.
perfected the prose poem that he calls it. Yeah.
And he's still teaching at UC Santa Cruz.
Santa Cruz, right.
And was poet laureate, whatever. But let's talk about, I want you to choose about 2 poems from the newest collection.
Well, I'll start with the first poem in the
There's
book.
a freedom in the work here that, to my mind, encapsulates the power of poetry. I mean, I'm pure fiction. And most of the stuff I read or write or whatever is pure fiction. But so I admire poetry, but I know I can't do it. But I know when I know something when I read it, hear it, see it, what it's how much it's great, how great it is, and I love the shortness of what you write. But anyhow, pick a couple of typical poems in the current one.
All right. Well, I'll start with a poem set in Oregon, where I grew up in the Willamette Valley, and it's called At Helmick Park. I turn off 99 to rest my eyes, parking under the Douglas fir, the big leaf maples, century-old farms of my cousins and uncles round about. Maybe 50 years ago, on this brown grass, a department picnic, my father, with his newly minted PhD, helping himself to baked beans that soak through the paper plates, and I, observing a softball game of teachers, graduate students, and children, much too shy to play myself. But the light, low and rich in the sky, the fresh spring colors of maple leaves, the department chair standing spry behind the plate as umpire. A burly graduate student smacks a long one past center field. Foul ball, cries the chair. Someone's 5th grade daughter taps an awkward dribble into the weeds. Fair, he cries. I hear the echoes, even now, the guffaws of protest. the rich astonishment of that girl ghosting her way around the bases. I could have played, I thought then. There is room for me in this world. Fair, foul, foul, fair. Even now I am calling them as I go.
Oh, lovely. Oh, great. Great.
So that's one. Maybe I'll choose.
When I said name dropping,
Okay.
didn't you do one that has like a Trader Joe's, or it has specific places that you visited in the poem?
Yeah, the wilderness poems, I tend to, at the bottom, label the wilderness or the park where the poem was written.
But do you write in Starbucks? I mean, is Starbucks in there, or
No,
Whole Foods or something?
not so much.
No. You might get some
Not
free
so
meals.
much.
No, but you should get some
Yeah.
free meals.
Yeah, not so much. Maybe I'll read a different kind of poem here.
All right, all right.
I had a friend up at Westmont, and he told me that in a little town along the Colorado River, in the storefront, there was a sign that said, "Haircuts and tacos." It just got me thinking. So that's the title of this poem: Haircuts.
Haircuts and tacos?
Haircuts and tacos. That's what the sign says on the storefront in Bullhead City along the steaming Colorado. Which would you want first? Either way, you'll be tasting split ends in your refried beans. But think about the time saved, about all the things we might combine: gas and perm, laundromat and five-stud poker, hold'em and fold'em, freshman comp and foot massage, efficiency, eclecticism. These are the signs of democracy, the little engines that make us mix our metaphors. Free Wi-Fi while you wait. In the green room, the jury box, the wedding chapel.
Oh, gosh. Oh, that's amazing. Keep on. One more. Come on, one
One
more.
more?
In that vein.
Okay.
In that vein.
All right.
Choice. We don't have any time as it is. There's no timing. So
All right.
things are going.
I think my father, who turns 90 next week, which I know he's still a young man compared to you, Fred, but
Yes.
He took the extended family to Hawaii a few years ago, and here we were in a condominium, and there was one wall full of mirrors over here and another wall full of mirrors over here, and we kept looking at ourselves, disappearing into the distance. And so this poem is called Vacation Condominium. The mirrors on opposite walls present us to ourselves in regression, as if going back in time to rooms we used to occupy. The people there are bewildered to be so small and distant, dismayed to be merely former selves. So they wave us back into their diminishing frames to join them as the hours elapse, as day joins on to day like boxcars coupling one to the other, until they reach a tiny caboose conducted by a portly man in miniature who fishes a watch from his fob pocket, pushes back his black-billed cap, and squints at the unlikelihood of any sort of timely departure. So I think poetry is...
Have you ever been to a place where somebody throws a situation out at you, and because I mean, your angle of interest is just, it's it's not dead on. It's sort of, it's a little off. So that you're surprised. I mean, everything you're writing, everything you're reading now is like a surprise to me because it's not going the way I think it would go. Is that's your style? Would you say?
Well, I think that's what poetry should aim for. It should surprise the writer and the reader a little bit. And William Stafford said that poetry is something you see out of the corner of your eye. It's just that funny angle.
Well, okay, that's where I'm going.
And so poetry is play too, is what I was going to say. And so there's this experience we've had. We're looking at ourselves disappear into opposing mirrors, and then to think, well, who are those people? And are we going back in time? Are they former selves? And then they're all lined up like a train, and if you have a train, you have a caboose. If you have a caboose, you have a conductor, and all of a sudden I'm describing the conductor at the end of the poem. So it's a chain of associations. Yeah.
Well, but I'm thinking that actors, you can throw out a theme to actors, especially.
Oh, right.
And that come.
I'm just not that fast.
No, I'm not. It's not the speed, but it's the imagination that you're throwing into it. I mean, if I went on a hike with you, my reaction, even if written reaction, would be nothing like yours. I mean, I'd be so mundane and sodden.
Well, no, you would have your own worthy reaction, Fred. I mean,
but you obviously, it's a talent of yours. I would have to be taught to develop it if it's possible, and it's too late for me. I mean,
Well, I don't know about this talent business. I think it's just maybe working at something, putting in a little time.
But you've been published with everything that you've written. I mean, to begin with, that's amazing. Probably to you it's a chore, but to have four books of poetry published, available, hopefully now at your website. You have a website. You want to give us? PaulJWillis.com.
That's the website.
That's what I want. Yes,
okay,
yes. Because
thank
I think poets need help in selling books because it's such a tough road to hoe. But there seem to be a monthly publication. There seem to be a lot of publications that I certainly am not aware of that are available to you. That not local so much as area-wide publications to submit your material to.
There are many literary journals throughout the country, and there are a few here. So. Chris Buckley publishes a poetry journal called Miramar in town.
Oh, no. Miramar, our Blue Roof Miramar, does he really mean that, you think? Yes, he would have to.
Miramar, named after the old hotel.
That's what I mean, the Blue Roof Hotel.
Okay, the Blue Roofed, right.
My favorite hotel.
Yeah, and Marcia De La O and Phil Taggart publish Askew, which is a poetry journal in Ventura. And
do you get together? Is the number one? There's a National Poetry Month, right?
Right, April.
Is it April? Because as a matter of fact, I've been having some meetings at the library, the public library, downtown library, and they're doing all sorts of planning. And I guess it's for the April month.
Yeah, they gear it up.
They're really, they got a whole bunch of new people, wonderful people who have wonderful ideas on keeping the excitement going. And I think, you and again Perry and a couple of other poets who keep us all aware of your interests and how it can work for other people too. I think that's important.
Yeah, as long as we're talking about websites, sbpoetry.net is the website to find out what's happening in terms of poetry in town.
Incidentally, we may have, we're working that we may end up with another book and author festival. So poetry will be part of that.
Well, great, and I know you've done that in the past.
Yeah, Susan and I are working on it. Somebody taking it over pretty soon. Yeah. Well, I think you bring excitement to our town. I mean, with what you're doing, and you continue to do it too. It's not that you don't sit back, and you probably, again, as a poet, you probably almost any situation. That's what I started to say. Will provoke you into writing something.
Yeah, if you let it, if you take the time.
And I think that's great. But again, I think I told you that the New York Times recently did something, did a group that says, "What is poetry?" And the answer, one of the answers was a message that you read at a birthday, at a funeral, at a whatever.
Yeah.
But there is that, again, it's that the shortness that you were talking about, the insightful shortness that does it. And you're working on another, you just don't stop, right? You said, I got the feeling that
Sure.
What are you writing? Are you writing in an area or just
Well, I
poems
have a manuscript of poems from the North Cascades from a pair of residencies I had there.
Oh, that's right. You
Yeah,
started.
and then other poems piling up. A number of us were poets in residence at the Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History this past year, and generated a number of poems there. And so yeah, they keep coming. I have an essay collection coming out next year. And
essay collection. But what about going back to fantasy and or doing any long-time fiction stuff?
Yeah, I don't know. I have a Elizabethan time travel novel I've been trying to place for a number of years, and it's a little bit close to my heart. Yeah.
I like the idea. You've obviously submitted it to various places.
A few places, gotten a few almost, yeah.
A few almost?
Yeah.
Oh. No, because it sounds to me like that's an open, a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
Oh God! So do you have an agent that helps you, or I figured you
not
don't.
right now.
I figured you didn't.
On and off in the past.
I figured you didn't.
Yeah.
But you always are trying to cultivate, hopefully, contacts to lead you to
sure.
To to where you will be led to.
And I want to say it's not, and this, it's not just networking for the sake of finding publishers, but it's for the joy of meeting and knowing other writers and laboring in a common vineyard and finding people whose work you appreciate, and maybe they appreciate your work too, and there's some really fine friendships that have come out of being part of the literary world.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And in terms of you and your wife doing hiking, I have to go back to hiking because I still somehow I'm labeling you a hiker.